Well, we're almost in May, and I'm going to do a May forecast here. But how does time fly so fast? It's that kind of crazy. It just seems like a day ago that we entered the calendar year of 2023, and now we're entering May. But before I dive into the forecast, I would like to invite you to subscribe to my channel. Please give me a thumbs up on the video. When you subscribe to the channel, if you check the little bell, you get notification when I upload new content. And also leave me a comment. I always, kind of at least heart comments, or I love to hear what you've got to say. I love your stories. I love your experiences. So please, talk to me in the comments. It's something I really appreciate. And also, I've now got merch. Check out the merch. I've got these t-shirts, I've got bags, I've got, no obligation, but if you find them fun and if you like my logo and if you like owls, consider treating yourself to something. I've also got various mugs. I've got a tea with Louise mug as well for my interview mugs and things like that. Go and check them out. They're all there. If you click on one of the items, it takes you to the whole shop. It just displays a small amount of them below this, but they're just fun. So let's dive in and share the screen. So I am going to share the screen for these forecasts. If you don't understand the astrology, just kind of maybe listen on Audible, or but if you like to see the chart, watch on Spotify or here on YouTube. So I don't know why I say here. I'm not recording this on YouTube. Watch on Spotify or YouTube. Spotify does video podcasts now. Anyway, here we go. So May the 1st, 2023, May opens with a bang. I've already done a full video on Pluto retrograde, but May starts with Pluto stationing retrograde. And so that's kind of an indication of the way the month is going. It's going to kind of take us deep. Pluto stations really kind of the time, particularly about 5 days before and 5 days afterwards. And I'm recording this on April the 27th, not the 26th as I posted this morning, but the 27th. So we're really in the Pluto retrograde change. And this is when big transformations happen. If you think about the energy of Pluto, it's really the energy of like excavating, digging up, mining, and it digs up your inner gold and it takes away what you thought was your power and leaves you with what is truly your power. So what a way to start the month. But there's even more. On May the 1st as well, we have the middle of the Mercury retrograde. So we have Pluto stationing retrograde at 0 Aquarius. And we have the Sun and Mercury actually conjunct right at 11 degrees of Taurus. I'm just going to get it exact for you. So 11 degrees, 19 minutes, which if you add 1 plus 9 is a 10. So it's all the ones. There's an awful lot of ones showing up in a lot of places at the moment. We really are in a time of new beginnings. And of course, that means endings also. But a cazimi is when a planet is in the throne of royalty. Traditional astrologers say throne of the king, but a lot of older and other cosmologies said the sun was female. So really the planets do not have a gender. We gender them ourselves. So I prefer to say that Mercury is in the throne of royalty, or the throne of the core organizing principle of our solar system, which is the sun. Because in our solar system, all the planets revolve around the sun. And this is what we work with in astrology. So anyway, it's a moment of real clarity in the middle of the retrograde. We also have a superior cazimi when the Sun and Mercury meet, when Mercury is direct. But during the retrograde, you know, I am not a fearer of Mercury retrogrades. Usually all the kind of mishaps that happen are kind of happy little accidents. They're not usually, you know, life-threatening things. Sometimes big things happen, but big things happen all the time. But I will say that the cazimi in the middle of the retrograde is usually a moment of dazzling clarity. If you think about Mercury, Mercury is involved with the mind, and but it's also involved with bringing messages. It's the transgressor. It's the transverser. It's the it transcends as well. It's moving things from one place to another, Mercury. And here we have it right in the middle of the retrograde on May the 1st as we start the month. Now, the actual cazimi will be when Mercury and the Sun are within 17 solar arc minutes either side. On my Facebook post or on my Substack, if you subscribe to my Substack, I send out my daily writings now every day. I will give you the exact cazimi times, so you will have them to refer to. But know that this is a nice evening one, the exact. So for most of the day, for us in the US particularly, the Mercury will be cazimi and then right into the night. So, you know, you'll just have to adjust for your time zones. But that is a big way to start the month. Pluto taking us into a deep dive within and really starting to mine something and purge something. And here's this Mercury right in the heart of the Sun, so we can see with dazzling clarity what's happening here. Big way to start the month. The next day, I'm only going to go through the major aspects, by the way, because, you know, there's so much and I cover a lot of things on my daily posts. So you can watch this and just get an idea of what's happening in the month ahead. But I hope you'll watch my Pluto retrograde video anyway, if you haven't already, or listen to the podcast, because this Pluto retrograde the whole time is a retrograde and a half for many reasons. The next day, Tuesday, May the 2nd, Juno, the partnership asteroid, leaves the sign of Taurus and enters Gemini. And she enters as Venus is really finishing her journey in there. But Juno she was the goddess who was the protector of women and children. She was Jupiter or Zeus's wife, but she was a very independent woman. She was queen of the goddesses as well. And she represents our partnership with all that is. She represents marriage, partnership, the Hieros Gamos. And in Gemini, this is going to be about friends, community, all those kind of things, and all that is other, really. It's got a more social vibe when Juno goes into there, but it's also Mercury ruled, and we've just had that cazimi, and as you can see, now these two have separated. Mercury's gone on to finish his retrograde journey. But Juno will have us thinking about our community relationships, our friend groups, our siblings perhaps as well, and also how we communicate with each other. So Juno's going to bring that expression into this energy. Right after Juno moves into the sign of Gemini, she will come up and will make a trine. Yes, a trine to Pluto. So Pluto's just stationed direct. Juno's just changed signs, and they speak to each other. So there'll be a lot of ideas. Perhaps you might want to purge some friends. You may want to change or transform how you are in your friend groups or how you are socially. So, you know, that's going to be a big day too. Then we have a little bit of a cosmic break for a few days because I'm only looking at the major aspects. Remember, if you subscribe to my Substack, link in the show notes, you will get kind of the more granular forecasts daily. So now we're going to move to May the 4th. Okay, and on May the 4th, we have one of the nicer aspects of the of all. It's when Venus and Neptune combine with each other. Now, this is a square, which is often seen as a more challenging aspect. However, I will say that squares give a push and a little bit of tension that really enables you to really integrate the energies. So we have Venus over here in Gemini squaring Neptune in Pisces. That's usually the rose-tinted spectacles kind of aspect. Anything to do with Venus and Neptune. I always want to sing the song Higher Love when Venus and Neptune get together. But this is a square and it's an opening square. And Neptune is also about release. There may be something about, remember I said about Juno and Pluto, you may want to purge some relationships. Venus and Neptune can be about letting go of relationships as well. And sometimes with Venus, Neptune, there's some element of illusion and delusion involved there. You may not be seeing people very clearly. There may be a little bit of confusion about what you think about people or those you're in relationship with. This is also about values. Venus is values and creativity and manifestation. So it's about dreaming and dreaming and dreaming about what you desire, but also maybe some of it's going to be a little bit unrealistic as well. But just be aware that there's the two sides to every story, particularly because Venus and a Gemini and Pisces are mutable signs. So there's often a bit of two-sidedness to everything. You may not be able to decide. You may not see clearly. You may think one thing the next minute and think another thing the next minute. But it is quite magical and quite sparkly and quite creative as well on the positive side. So I always like Venus Neptune aspects personally. The very next day, well, oh no, the other news on May the 4th is that Mars over here in Cancer finally goes back into the bounds of the sun and is tethered to the ecliptic again. Mars has been out of bounds since October 2022. Then he went retrograde in the sign of Gemini at the end of October 2022. To be quite honest, I have had enough of Mars out of bounds and that retrograde time. It's been enough for me. And with Mars being our will and our drive and our energy, it will be nice to have Mars acting normally. I'm not saying nothing positives come from it. Mars is our, as I said, our drive, our energy, our will, also our aggression, our anger, and so on and so forth. But it'd been kind of nice to have Mars acting normally again. So I'm very excited that late on May the 4th, for some of you, it will be May the 5th, Mars is finally back in bounds. He won't leave the sign of Cancer where he's not at his most comfortable. He's said to be in fall there until May the 20th. So he's still kind of a bit sensitive, a little bit touchy in the sign of Cancer. So know that there's still a little bit of hypersensitivity around this whole Mars journey. I've been really super sensitive, and I know many around me have, and that's okay. It's okay to honor your super sensitive and to protect yourself, because after all, Mars is also the guardian and protector. But I'll be looking forward to when he leaves the sign of Cancer as well. But excited that Mars will be going back in bounds. That's just like, whew. I didn't mention with the Venus-Neptune square, actually, that Venus is also out of bounds. So she's acting a little bit eccentric. But that can be good, more good with Venus, especially because she's kind of chatty and sociable in the sign of Gemini. So, you may be a little bit more lively, a little bit more alert, a little bit more of a live wire. I had to laugh this morning as I record this on April the 27th. The moon is in Leo, and I'm kind of feeling the Venus in Gemini because it's opposing my Sagittarius sun. So I wore this bright orange t-shirt that's got a funny thing on it, and the gym owner was trying to read it, and I was going, oh, it's just fun, this t-shirt, I had to have it, and it's nice and bright. She was like, yeah, you're certainly a bright character. It's like, is that a compliment or not? But anyway, you get the idea. Then on May the 5th, Mars back in bounds, all those things, and we have the lunar eclipse. I will say that I have done a full video on that as well as the Pluto retrograde. So if you want more details on those things, if you haven't seen them already, I really suggest you do that. But we've had the new moon eclipse that was at 29 Aries. Now we have the full moon eclipse on May the 5th. I'm not going to go into full details, but I do have to say that this is perhaps going to have a bit of a shocking quality because Uranus is near the sun. Surprise, shock, whatever. Not necessarily always bad. It can be awakenings as well, that kind of shock. It's just like, oh, I feel like I've been kind of slapped around the head with that idea. I've been getting those lately anyway. But this is a South Node eclipse, and Pluto did just station 4 days before, and Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio, or the modern ruler of Scorpio, and Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio. So Mars has just gone back in bounds. He's a bit sensitive. Pluto's just stationed retrograde. This eclipse could be a real purgy release kind of eclipse. And it could be a little bit flood of emotions, and literal floods as well. I always find Scorpio full moons often bring floods, by the way. So there's that. Okay, so that was the eclipse. The very next day, so really happening at the same time, Ceres, the Great Mother, who represents grief, loss, forgiveness, and how we nourish and nurture, how we were nurtured, how we are nurtured or nourished, what feeds us, and how we desire to feed as well. But Ceres on May the 6th turns direct in the sign of Virgo, and she's quite Virgoan in nature. Astrologers can't really agree whether she whether Ceres rules Taurus or Virgo. I could actually, she was discovered at 23 degrees of Taurus, and I could make an argument for both signs. And my maverick rebellious self wants to do away with the whole concept of rulership. Now we've got all these newly discovered energies that we also work with, that many astrologers work with anyway, but that's a whole nother thing. But anyway, she's going direct at 23 Virgo, which is actually enshrined to her discovery degree back on January the 1st, 1801. But at 23, you've heard me talk about it many times, is the most human of numbers for many reasons. You can go and look it up if you like. It's also the number of chaos magic. I love that Ceres is stationing direct at 23 degrees of Virgo. Virgo being the sign of the priestess. The symbol for Virgo looks like an M, and to me it's all the Marys. It's the Magdalene, it's Mother Mary, it's all those Isis, Inanna, all those kind of priestess figures. And here is Ceres, how we nourish ourselves. She's been retrograde, saying how do we nourish wholeness and completeness, and how do we nourish that priestess energy within all of us. So that's going to be a big change too. So we've started May with a bang. We're only at May the 6th, and and we've had Pluto stationing retrograde, Ceres stationing direct, and an eclipse and a Venus Neptune square, and a Mercury cazimi. So that first week of May is a biggie. But we're not done, because Venus then moves into the sign of Cancer. She leaves Gemini, where she's been quite sociable, and she moves into the sign of Cancer over here. This, by the way, is asteroid chaos, and so chaos is there, but I'll talk more about things like that on the daily reports. But Venus moving into Cancer, our values and our love nature turns to the home and our stomach and self-care and protection and our basis of security. And so she's going to be in the sign of Cancer. Oh, I'm just going to quickly say she's from May the 7th until June the 5th. So 4 full weeks, Venus will be in the sign of Cancer. And so for that period, you're going to be really kind of, it's a good time to spring clean, you know. May, Venus in Cancer, make your home look beautiful, kind of cook nice meals, lots of self-care, lots of self-love, and lots of love for the family, or family of choice, whichever. I love Venus in Cancer personally, but then again, I think I say that about most placements. So moving on from that first week, what a big week. Just know that it's a big week, not necessarily awful, but there's a lot going on. So, and with 2 planets changing directions and a lunar eclipse, it's going to feel like sands are shifting under you. Things settle down a little bit, okay, after that first week, a little bit. But then we have, on May the 9th, we have another big aspect, in my opinion. Now, the Sun will conjunct Uranus, and the Sun conjuncts Uranus every year because the Sun catches up to Uranus every year. This one, I noticed this way back when Uranus was last retrograde last year. All the outer planets, by the way, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, etc., go retrograde every year. But when Uranus went retrograde last year, he went retrograde at 18 degrees and 55 minutes of Taurus. So this conjunction of the Sun and Uranus is Uranus leaving the shadow of his retrograde. So he's past the old ground. I don't believe in the shadow as the way it's always talked about, kind of, in a lot of pop astrology. I do believe that they are the planets are covering the ground they were retrograde at, though, and kind of things can come back. I don't believe in kind of this wonky shadow kind of idea, and it's nothing shadowy about it. It's just recovering old ground. Well, now Uranus is breaking new ground, literally, on May the 9th. He's moving to a minute of the zodiac, a degree and minute of the zodiac, where he has not been for 84 years, which is his cycle. And here he is with the Sun. So he's in the throne of the core organizing principle of the universe, as Mercury was. And I think we're going to have big awakenings, or there's going to be some kind of big news, some kind of lightning bolt of awareness or something like that on the 9th when the Sun and Uranus meet. And it's going to feel like we're breaking new ground. Uranus is about liberation and is quite radical and revolutionary. And so it's got that kind of vibe to it as we start this new cycle. So it's kind of quite a profound moment to my mind. So mark that day on your calendars too, May the 9th. And now to May the 11th, we have a big aspect too. We have Mars back in bounds, remember, thank the Lord. or thank the goddess, should say. May the 11th, Mars over here will square Eris, who is the ripper down of white picket fences and the revealer of artifice, and she's the activist kind of energy. That's quite a fired up energy there. Mars square Eris. It's I think it's Mars plus Eris is still really within orb of Jupiter, so everything's bigger, larger than life. This feels like anybody, it kind of feels like, you know, Occupy could start again or something like that. There's going to be some kind of radical vibe going on there about we're going to fight for our rights and so on and so forth. That's going to be an interesting one. Mars square Eris on May the 11th. Now to May the 13th, an aspect I don't always look at a trine because there's too many aspects to look at. But Venus-Saturn aspects are always interesting. Experience shows me that one as well. They're often Venus-Saturn aspects, even with a trine aspect, are often reality kind of checks. Okay. They're often kind of a little bit of a wake-up call. It's kind of a bit of a stop. Saturn goes, hey, there's something you need to look at here. There's something you need to master in terms of Venus subjects like relationships and values and so on and so forth. Now, this particular trine is very interesting because it's in a mini grand trine with Mercury, retrograde Mercury, who's now at his at 5 degrees of Taurus, which is the degree he will station direct at. And remember that Mercury's about those transgressions and traversing and crossing kind of words. And because the Mercury traveled between humans and the gods. So pay attention on May the 13th to what messages you're getting around your relationships and so on. Okay. All right. On May the 14th, Jupiter is going to oppose dwarf planet Haumea. Now, I don't always look at Haumea in these monthly reports, but again, if they're really standing out to me, I do. Jupiter's in the sign of Aries and opposing Haumea. And why is this is huge? Because this is the degree of the April the 20th eclipse, the lunar new moon eclipse. So it's activating that eclipse energy and expanding and exacerbating things that started then. And it's opposing Haumea, which is the goddess of birth and fertility. And I think she's just pure creation. And Haumea is back at 29 degrees, where she was Libra, where she was conjunct the Sun and Venus on the October the 22nd, 2022, Libra Venus star point. That was the first Libra star point since the late 19th century and the first one for over 100 years. This is a big shift, and it started on the eclipse, but this is going to really bring something to light. Jupiter staring in the face of Haumea, something about what we're creating, what we're birthing, and it's going to be connected with that eclipse and that star point from last October. So pay attention to what comes up for you those days. It's at the anaretic liminal degree, which is kind of like this border crossing where you're about to go into a new country. We know we're moving into like something new and things are really changing. So really pay attention to this Jupiter opposing Haumea. On the same day, May the 14th, Mercury will station direct. Okay. So that's the third planetary shift. Yeah. This month, because we have Pluto, then Ceres, and now Mercury. So Mercury goes direct May the 14th, late in the evening, so the 15th for some of you, and he will start to go back over the degrees that he was retrograde through. Now, combine that with the Jupiter Haumea opposition and thinking of Mercury as that transitional kind of energy, with Jupiter opposing Haumea and Mercury shifting direct, our perceptions are going to be changed. We're going to start thinking differently. We're going to think about how we need to translate what we've learned into future actions. So that's a big one too. On May the 15th, Mars, we had Venus square to Neptune, but now we have Mars trine to Neptune very shortly afterwards, really. So, but Venus was moving very fast. So Mars over here at 27 Cancer. I mean, look how fast Venus has just gone into Cancer, and there she is. Wow. She's going to start slowing down towards her retrograde soon. She's about to reach maximum elongation, by the way. Oh, I can't remember the day of that. Follow my Substack to find out about that. But May the 15th, Mars will trine off to Neptune. That's kind of, that's very drive to create as well in Cancer, drive to protect and strive to protect and shore up our basis of security, because Mars is just about finishing his journey in Cancer, and he is very touchy and guardian like in Cancer. He's like, no, I've got to protect, I've got to, that's pinging me, I've got to like protect this and protect that. On May the 16th, Jupiter, I don't want to talk about the trine too much because trines tend to be a little bit lazy, but it's still a thing. Jupiter finishes in the sign of Aries. Now, Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. He spends about a year in each sign. He kind of dips back and forth sometimes with retrogrades, and he did that in Aries, but now he's done with Aries. Jupiter moves into the sign of Taurus on May the 16th, 2023, and he'll be there for about a year. And when Jupiter's in Taurus, he's kind of much more concerned with material world and abundance and expansion of values and sustainability and expansion, and all things of the senses, I meant to say. Now, as soon as Jupiter enters the sign of Taurus, you can see that he's heading towards a conjunction with the North Node. So this is pulling us towards what we've been working towards for the last 19 months almost, because the nodes spend about 19 months in each sign. The nodes leave the signs of Taurus and Scorpio in July, so they're nearly finished. And this Jupiter North Node conjunction that's really happening right away is going to say, what have you been planning since May? Was it May 2022? Sorry about that. Whenever the nodes have been in, I think it was in Taurus and Scorpio. What are you expanding more of? How are you shoring up your abundance and your sustainability more than anything? Where are you rooted? Where are you rooted in the material world? And where are you shoring up that strength and digging those roots and making sure that you are really kind of rock solid? So that will be a big shift in focus with Jupiter moving into the sign of Taurus. Almost immediately, though, after moving into the sign of Taurus, Jupiter will square off to Pluto at that 0 degree mark. And remember, we started on May the 1st with Pluto turning direct. So, and at 0 degrees is the Fool in the tarot. It's the number of infinite possibilities. It's the Alpha and Omega. It's about taking a risk, taking a leap on the Fool's journey. The Fool kind of is like juggling all these possibilities and seeing them. It's a good time with Jupiter square Pluto to ask questions like, what else is possible that I'm not seeing here? That's a question from a thing called access consciousness. You don't need to look into that, but it's a kind of an open-ended question about what's possible, or how is this possible, or what am I not seeing? So think of possibilities with Jupiter square Pluto, and possibilities of transformation with Pluto being about transformation. What can you see that you are ready to transform? That's quite a big square on May the 17th. Then May the 19th, we do have a new moon. Okay, the new moon is at the 28th degree of Taurus, conjunct Sedna. I don't talk about Sedna all the time, but Sedna is about spiritual destiny through crisis. She has a really, really long cycle, 11,000 plus years. But she is about big cycles of change, climate change, changing the way humanity lives, and so on and so forth. The last time she was here, I've said it before, was at the end of the Great Ice Ages, over 11,000 years ago. And it's when man became farmers, when they started planting crops and so on and so forth. So this is the last new moon that will be conjunct the sign of Sedna, or the planet Sedna, dwarf planet, before she moves into the sign of Gemini. So I think there's going to be something really coming up around how we live on the earth, and what our human total destiny is, and how it's changing, and what our destiny is to move towards. It's a new moon, so it's about beginning something, about planting seeds of something. How are we planting the seeds of change to move to a more sustainable Taurus future? Okay. Then on May the 20th, Mars moves into Leo. Oh, and Mars is going to be a much happier boy or person in the sign of Leo. Mars is fiery anyway, and Mars likes he likes energy and forward movement, and in Leo he can be creative and follow the heart. That's going to be quite fired up when Mars moves into the sign of Leo. Excuse me. Mars will be in the sign of Leo until July the 10th. So it's quite a fast journey, because Mars has really gained speed after his long, long time in Gemini and Cancer. Could I emphasize how much that has been a bit of a drag for this person, but I think for most of us. Mars in Leo, though, until July. So just, wow, less than 2 months. Mars is going to be like, I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to take the lead, and I'm going to, but just, a shadow of Leo is very egoic and very kind of grandiose. Mars in Leo can be a little bit grandiose and kind of bulldoze people around it. But look at this, when Mars moves into the sign of Leo, he immediately on the same day opposes Pluto and squares Jupiter. So this is a big day. And a T-square is a tense aspect of change. It's pushing for change. But in fixed signs, which Taurus, Leo, and Aquarius are, this is about what we're making real, what we really want to create. And this is big change that we want to create with Mars opposing Pluto, especially bearing in mind that Mars and Pluto jointly rule that south node. So in some respects here, we have a fixed grand cross, and I've talked about it a little bit in my Pluto video, but here you go. I'm going to draw some lines to show you. We've got this fixed grand cross, big possibilities of making real, manifesting real change and bringing it. So even though Mars' journey in the sign of Leo is not that long, I think it's going to be quite a transformational one that's activated and spurred by his Grand Cross immediately as he moves into Leo, especially because Jupiter has only just moved into the sign of Taurus. So that's a big day as well. Oops, apologies. I meant to clear the the lines. That cleared it anyway. So okay, then on May the 21st, Gemini season. So the sun moves into the sign of Gemini on May the 21st. And cue the Gemini memes on my Facebook page. I do them just to add a bit of fun. We're still under that T-square with Mars, or the fixed grand cross rather. But the moon moves to the 0 degree, and of course then, the sun moves to 0 degrees of Gemini. So happy birthday to all Geminis from May the 21st. But immediately the sun will trine Pluto and sextile Mars and be in a semi-sextile to Jupiter. So those early degrees are definitely about new starts, but they're also kind of uncomfortable because it's new territory and we're not very used to this territory. So that in the Gemini ingress, their time around May the 20th, 2021 could be a little bit uncomfortable because humans often do not like change. So, and that's change. So on May the 23rd, Mars exactly squares Jupiter. So really that energy I've talked about with 0 to 1 degrees of the fixed signs, well, really to 3 degrees. So if you've got anything in the early degrees of fixed signs, you're going to really feel this, okay? And I'm going to say probably right up to at least 5, 6, 7 even degrees of fixed signs. So again, the fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. You're going to feel this push to change. Okay. On May the 24th, Venus will square off to Chiron, who's been a bit quiet this month. And we may get some relationship wounds pinged with this one. And Venus in the sign of Cancer, wanting to shore up safety and stability, there could be some, you know, that's kind of the day where you could discover if you've got any investments that one of them's made a bit of a tumble, or there could be a little bit of a ping around your identity in your relationships, in your family. Oh, thank you. So, you know, it's a little bit pingy, but also I always think with Chiron that Chiron brings you the medicine too, that you can choose to take or not. So pay attention to what comes up that day. 2 more aspects, and then we're done for the month of the merry month of May. So Sun square Saturn. Okay, so the sun has reached 6 degrees of Gemini by May the 28th and squares off to Saturn. Again, Saturn can bring a little bit of reality checks and things. We talked about this with Venus and Saturn. I'm liking Saturn in Pisces though, because Pisces is really softening the planet Saturn and really asking us to kind of let go of a lot of the shoulds in our life. And with Venus, with the sun in Mercury ruled Gemini, I kind of think we're going to be shifting our shoulds or letting go of our shoulds, and they may come up to be let go of. So we should not should all over ourselves. Sorry, I'm so funny. Last aspect of importance is Uranus. Remember, Uranus is treading new ground, the new ground in 84 years. Okay, so Uranus on the penultimate day. I don't think there's much happening on May the 31st at all. Let me just check that actually. There's something wonky been happening with my printouts. It'll take me 1 second. Nope, no big aspects on May the 31st. The last aspect is Uranus has now moved from 18 degrees. He's really speeding along for Uranus right now because he's heading towards another retrograde. But Uranus is conjunct Vesta. Now, this is particularly interesting as well because Uranus is conjunct Vesta. Vesta's the inner flame of sacred devotion and commitment and focus. And in the sign of Taurus, which is about sustainability in the material world and the earth, Venus is or Taurus is the home of Venus. This exactly squares the August the 13th retrograde Venus star point or cazimi that's coming up during the Venus retrograde. So this is going to be my plug for signing up for the Venus retrograde heroine's journey beginning July the 19th. May the 30th will be the last day of the 3-pay option. So if you haven't signed up by the, May the 31st will be, but if you haven't signed up by the end of May, the 3-pay option is going to go away and be replaced by a 2-pay option. And then at the end of June, it's going to just a single pay option. So I will put the link in the description, and I would check out my Venus retrograde heroine's journey class and know that this aspect here is going to awaken or give an idea of what's going to come in the Venus retrograde in Leo throughout the summer. That's also very connected with this big Pluto retrograde journey we've got going on this summer. So pay attention to what's awakened in you on May the 30th that you need to focus on, because it's exactly square to the degree of the next Venus star point. So that's all from me. Don't forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up, and check out the comments and check out the merch. And I love you, and I will see you next video.